During the 90s, there was a Monday Night War. The two sides, the World Championship Wrestling versus the World Wrestling Federation. Each company would try and best the other using any tactics they could. Not only was the war competed in the ratings, but also in Las Vegas, where the WCW would open the Nitro Grill. WWF would aim to take it one step further. They planned a whole WWF casino. One would be a spectacular failure, while the other would get cancelled completely. A few years after Excalibur opened in Las Vegas, home of the gamblers, on the second floor in the medieval village, Wild Bill's Saloon and Steakhouse was added. The resort would take some of its strolling entertainers and move them to a permanent home in the medieval fantasy resort with nothing more fitting. A Wild West country and western restaurant, foot-stomping dancing with free line dancing lessons weekly, while offering a selection of steaks, ribs and burgers. What could get more authentic than that? It would be at the resort until the end of the 90s, when it would be replaced. On November 23, 1998, the Excalibur restaurant in Las Vegas announced that it would be bringing the world's first WCW Nitro Grill to the end of the hall on the second floor of the Castle Resort. The WCW Nitro Grill would aim to be the home for everything wrestling, with live music, shopping, and dining. At the time, until recently at least, WCW had seemed unstoppable. World Championship Wrestling began broadcasting as a television show in 1982, produced by Georgia Championship Wrestling. I could spend hours talking about the history of wrestling, but I won't. To cut it short, in 1988, Ted Turner, owner of TBS, acquired the assets and wanted to keep wrestling as a staple on TV. Eric Bischoff was given financial and creative control of WCW, as it was struggling financially and considered to be, well, not great. With Bischoff in charge, he believed that WCW needed drastic changes and modernization, and began recruiting top wrestlers away from the World Wrestling Federation, bringing in big names such as Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage.
And now WCW is about to dominate the globe in professional wrestling.
In 1995, the decision was taken with Ted Turner that in order for WCW to compete, they would require a new flagship show to go directly against WWF Raw. It led to the creation of WCW Monday Nitro, which would air on TNT the exact same day and time as Raw. The first Nitro would debut on September 4th, 1995, and kicked off the Monday Night War era of wrestling, where each production would compete to get the best TV ratings. It led to a huge increase in watchers in professional wrestling on TV, and led to what is often considered wrestling's golden era. WCW Monday Nitro proved to be a huge success, instantly getting a TV audience the same size as WWF Raw, with each show weekly trading victories in the ratings, and people were tuning in just to see what each wrestling outlet would do next, until a victor emerged. In June 1996, something would happen that would end the back and forth in the ratings and firmly place WCW on top, with the start of the New World Order. Former WWF stars Scott Hall and Kevin Nash would unexpectedly leave the WWF and come to WCW the following night and pretend they were there on behalf of WWF, while teasing a third member of the NWO. That third man would turn out to be Hollywood Hulk Hogan. WCW had a live, anything could happen episode feeling that viewers would tune in for week after week, with its darker, more realistic storylines. The company went from struggling drastically to making millions in profit, and also making one of the best wrestling video games ever made. Just saying. While they found success, it didn't last long, and by late 1998, storylines for the WCW were struggling. and ratings were down, with the WWF about to enter its best era ever. WCW had no doubt though, almost arrogantly, that nothing could touch them, not even a finger poke. So they wanted to try a different lane of revenue, and signed a deal to license the very first WCW restaurant.
That was stupid. That was really stupid.
2 times, 2 weeks in a row. Welcome to 2026. In November 1998, American Vantage Companies, through its subsidiary, Sitka Restaurant Group, would enter in a licensing agreement with WCW to create and develop the Nitro Grill, with the agreement commencing from May 17, 1999, when the Nitro Grill opened. They had entered into a 10-year lease for the location of the Nitro Grill in the Excalibur Hotel, spending $1.9 million to develop and execute the idea in a giant 16,000 square foot space. In return, WCW would receive a share of the restaurant's revenue and agreed to send wrestlers to make appearances at the restaurant. The restaurant itself had seating for 350 people. WCW decor and memorabilia covered the walls, and they would show WCW at all times on screens, including live as the show aired. The experience of watching your favorite weekly Nitro episode while dining at the restaurant or sitting at the bar was ravishing. Sometimes it even got rowdy. Too much? Nah, let's keep it going. The biggest moneymaker for the restaurant would be a whole section of WCW merchandise in the gift shop. They also promised repeatedly that WCW stars could be at the restaurant at any moment. You wouldn't really get to see the big stars at the restaurant though, except for at the opening, even if they had offered them free food. But you could get a picture with Disco Inferno. The Nitro Grill planned a knockout menu with headlock hot wings, wrestling rings, Macho Man nachos, Booker T-bone, and of course, a Goldberger, complete with pickle, spear. I mean, they even got Goldberg on the menu holding a knife and fork. They claimed this would be where the big boys ate. The menu even asked to please not steal it as a souvenir, but they did offer one you could buy in the gift shop. The food portions were extremely large, so it was not uncommon to see people walking around Excalibur with their leftover food in a bag. Well, for a young kid staying at the Excalibur with its big arcade, wrestling-themed restaurant, and Dragon outside in 1999 was the ultimate vacation. The food was actually also pretty good. Well, better than some of the other theme restaurants at the time. I'll take one order of the Big Sexy Porterhouse, please. Every single item on the menu had some kind of wrestling-themed name, even the cocktails. The powers in charge, Eric Bischoff, said that the Nitro Grill is going to be a can't-miss destination for wrestling fans in Vegas. Just a few months after it opened, Eric Bischoff would be out as president of WCW, and by late 1999, WCW was losing millions of dollars, even as home to the $1 Million Man. But hey, at least you could still go to Vegas and get chokeslam cheese fries while you watched a rubbish episode of Nitro. Before the restaurant opened, they held a wall breaking ceremony. Literally as it sounds. Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Diamond Dallas Page, along with management and more, would not use hacksaws to literally break the walls down with a sledgehammer. Wait, is that where WWE got those ideas? It was literally the same year. Now I'm suspicious. Anyway, the opening wall break-in was met with a media frenzy, with the area being real dusty after they finished breaking through the wall. WCW Nitro Grill opened on May 24, 1999. It had the flair of everything you would want to see and expect from a wrestling-themed restaurant. At the opening, Carl Rogers, president of Sitka, said that this restaurant would be the flagship. They had the worldwide rights, and their goal was to open several more in the United States and beyond. The inside was designed to look like a wrestling arena, with sections divided by different pay-per-views. Open from 11 AM to 11 PM, and even later for the bar, so fans of Vampiro could even visit. The restaurant set the strip ablaze, with fans coming from far and wide to get to experience the hottest new restaurant in Excalibur. Not to be outdone in Las Vegas, the WWF had bigger plans, and would come with attitude. The WWF was now thriving, while WCW was failing.
Debbie Reynolds has been collecting Hollywood memorabilia since 1970, when MGM began to auction off their old costumes and props.
The $3 million Royal Inn opened in April 1970, east of the Las Vegas Strip on the edge of town. The small 12-story hotel contained 200 rooms. Over the next decade, it would go through different owners, names, and themes, often being renovated and expanded. The biggest re-theme would be into the paddle wheel, which was inspired by Circus Circus with a child-friendly casino, an arcade, and small rides. Before, as Vegas does, quickly switching back to an adult-focused establishment and eventually closed in October 1991. The closed hotel was purchased by actress Debbie Reynolds and her husband Richard Hamlet at auction in 1992 for $2.2 million, where they planned a huge refurbishment to include a museum to house her collection of Hollywood memorabilia. The casino reopened in July 1993 as the Debbie Reynolds Hollywood Hotel, before being forced to drop the Hollywood from the name after they were sued by Hollywood casinos. Debbie Reynolds would often perform at the property and working on her museum while the rest of the resort was leased out. From the start, the museum was struggling financially. When they couldn't get a gambling license due to poor finances, the Debbie Reynolds Hotel closed its doors in 1996, with Reynolds and the hotel both filing for bankruptcy. The hotel was put up for auction in August 1998. The winning bid of $10.6 million, way less than the hoped for $18 million, would be from the World Wrestling Federation, with lawyers acting as the bearer of bad news to Reynolds herself. The WWF's new angle was that they were planning a casino hotel in Las Vegas. They didn't want to build it in a place full of snow, but in the middle of the sunny desert. Vince McMahon, the big boss man, wanted to pull the gun on a new revenue-making avenue. Their aim was to demolish the whole hotel and rebuild it as a 35-story wrestling-themed hotel and casino with 1,000 rooms. When asked about the sale, Debbie Reynolds saw it as a shame, as she wanted a tribute to the motion picture industry in the location, but she couldn't do anything about it. When asked about keeping Debbie Reynolds as part of the new venture, an attorney involved with the 905 Group, who was a minority buyer with WWE, said it was part of change. He said, just as Michelle Pfeiffer is to Hollywood today, what Debbie Reynolds was to Hollywood a few years ago, this property is going to reflect how the city's changing. There was hardly any dispute. Debbie Reynolds would not be involved, even if at first they said they didn't know if they were going to continue with her at the resort. There was just no road dog that the WWF and Debbie Reynolds would work together. They were stone cold on that front. The giant high-rise would feature a giant WWF on the outside, which, if it had happened, would have been kinda awkward when they were forced to change the name to WWE in 2002. The lobby casino was to be themed to a wrestling arena, with matches airing on giant jumbotrons above. This wasn't your usual regal-looking casino. It was full-on WWF Attitude of the Era looking. There would of course be a merchandise shop to buy your Triple H merchandise, and sections themed to different pay-per-views. For restaurants, you could eat at a buffet where you could smell what The Rock was cooking, or you could dine at Vince's Steakhouse. No thanks. Rooms were set to be Godfather themed. Actually, I'm just kidding on that one. The casino planned to have retired wrestlers as greeters, an Undertaker tattoo parlor, and Stone Cold betting chips. The project was expected to cost over $100 million. The slogan for the resort was "'Cause life is one big crapshoot." Newspapers joked about bellhops putting guests in headlocks if they didn't tip enough, blackjack dealers who would deliver an arm to the face, and referees roaming the halls rather than security. There were going to be nightly wrestling shows and more, but it turned out to be a gamble that the McMahon family wouldn't take. Mankind would not get a WWF casino. For a while, the wrestling storm was coming to Las Vegas, but it didn't last long. WWF Casino was ultimately cancelled in December 2000 when it failed the test. The land they had purchased was deemed too small, and more importantly, not on the Strip. The McMahons cited that they didn't have the experience with running a hotel and decided to focus on what they knew: saying do what you know and understand, and do it passionately. The casino business must be in your blood. They decided not to take the gamble. Later, there were proposals to make a WWE casino across the road from Mandalay Bay, but that one also didn't happen. The casino they purchased was sold again to the Clarion Group, and eventually the building was demolished. Today, it is an empty lot. They still didn't want to be outdone by WCW, however, and would open a restaurant experience for themselves in New York City with a brand new undertaking. As for the WCW Nitro Grill, as WCW continued to fail on the air, the restaurant was having its own problems. By the end of 1999, American Vantage, who owned the restaurant, was losing $500,000 a year. It didn't come from the Nitro Grill, but from a terminated consulting contract they had with a tribal casino. In fact, Nitro Grill was actually the only thing that was making them any money at all. The company believed the future of profits were online, and had paid $1 million for an 80% stake in Placement 2000, an online service for technology professionals and recruiters, and they wanted to buy even more online companies. These purchases were huge failures, and shortly after they had to sell it for a loss. The Nitro Grill though was mostly profitable, and actually kinda popular, despite WCW's failing ratings. But its owners were struggling. American Vantage were now in debt, and had to rid itself of its assets, including the WCW Nitro Grill. Nitro Grill would only last 16 months before closing its doors with no warning to Excalibur in September 2000. For fans of the restaurant, it was a big sting. Sitka was required to give WCW and the Excalibur Hotel 120 days notice of the termination of the license agreement and lease, which they did not do. They just didn't have the financing to keep it running. The company's only remaining assets would be Border Grill at Mandalay Bay. The dream of a WCW restaurant around the world, like Hard Rock Cafe had successfully done, would never come. Eventually the space that was the WCW Nitro Grill would become a Dick's Last Resort restaurant. Because you know, who doesn't love being insulted while you eat?
And as if the WCW's Nitro Grill weren't enough for fans, the other wrestling guys, the WWF, are planning an entire wrestling resort at the former Debbie Reynolds Hotel.
After the closure of the WCW Nitro Grill, WCW continued to fail, eventually ending forever. In 2001, WWF would purchase the assets of WCW, ending the Monday Night Wars forever. For a short time, WCW had been on top, and the Nitro Grill was the place to be, with Monday Night Wars leading to some of the best wrestling entertainment ever seen in TV. But who are you gonna kid, man? For a short time, growing up as a kid, watching wrestling each week, and being able to go eat a Booker T-bone at a castle-themed hotel in Las Vegas was the envy of many. For fans of WCW, the Nitro Grill was a place full of heart. Literally.
Mistakes, I've made a few. Welcome to the Nitro Grill. Buy the big sexy steak because everybody knows it's the best meat in the house.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Expedition Extinct. If you enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe to join the expedition. Follow us on social media for updates on upcoming episodes, and a special thank you to our Patreons for supporting the channel. We will see you next time.